Every year around Halloween, we are treated to an outpouring of what could only be described as scare literature, telling us about how the holiday is satanic and evil and should not be celebrated by Christians. These opinions are backed up by some rather unusual and very frightening fantasies masquerading as historical facts. The following videos are not intended to address whether or not Satan exists, nor to show that witches are nice granola eating vegetarians and tree huggers who wouldn't harm a fly. Nor is it an attack on fundamentalist Christians, but rather a discussion concerning some of the so-called facts offered in some anti-Halloween publications.
Michele Blake wrote a very popular article entitled 10 Reasons I Kissed Halloween Goodbye. It was responded to by Yuri Stasiak and Derek Powlett. In this series we will go over each reason Blake gave.
7. Be faithful in the small things. For many Christians, the thought of whether to celebrate Halloween is a small issue, maybe even a non-issue. After all, it's only one day a year. And what harm is there really in a handful of Snickers miniatures and a pillowy pumpkin costume?
Finally, an argument that Blake posits seems to make sense, unless... Oh no, the only reasonable statement is merely her conspiracy introduction.
Let me answer that this way. First, our character, integrity, and devotion to God is evident in the small things. If we can't be faithful in the small things, how will our hearts be faithful in the big things?
The only rational statement is quickly followed up by a non sequitur logical fallacy. She makes a giant, unproven and improvable leap, from saying giving a pumpkin child a Snickers is really a sign of unfaithfulness to God. This is taking on the form of a moralizing superstitious myth. 0% fact, 100% shaming everyone who disagrees. This is starting to smell like the Spanish Inquisition.
He that is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much, and he that is unrighteous in a very little is unrighteous also in much. Luke 16:10.
A quick cursory glance will show you that the whole chapter of Luke has to do with greed and forgiveness. I double-checked in the Greek 5 times, the word Halloween is really not there, but I'd encourage you to double-check.
So, yes, even something as seemingly small as how we handle Halloween is important.
I totally agree with this statement. Showing our intellectual dishonesty, proclivity to childish superstition, and gullibility towards urban myths tells a great deal about us. And furthermore, it makes unbelievers far less likely to take us seriously.
Second, God has told us to focus on what is pure, noble, right, lovely, and admirable. Philippians 4:8. Is Halloween any of these things? No, and therefore it is unworthy of any of our time or thoughts.
Another improper hermeneutic handing of a Bible verse. This passage is not concerned with 21st century Halloween, as it is with our hearts. Let's ask, is reading about the killing of a large group of people pure, noble, right, lovely, and admirable? Blake would quickly jump and say no. And by doing that, she would tell us that the Old Testament does not fit her criterion.
Third, the Son of God appeared for this purpose, that he might destroy the works of the devil. 1 John 3:8.
Yet again there is a leap of ignorance to assume, and declare Halloween is equivalent to the devil. She gives no explanation, no evidence, no intellectual rigor, and no honesty. And so she deserves no answer except the equivalent type of baseless declaration, that she is completely wrong. She is wrong. Boom. Roasted. Because I said so.
If God came for the purpose of destroying the works of Satan, why do we then try, remember, imitate, and even elevate those very things? How do we expect we will be able to keep ourselves faithful, when the big temptations come alone, when we can't even say no to glorifying evil in what we do for fun?
Here Blake begins to expose her intimate inner self, including the fact that deep down she is really tempted to go out there and celebrate Halloween. I can only sympathize with her. Indeed, it is really hard sometimes. Why even now I'm really craving to go out there and join the neighborhood children, I mean Satanists, in the pagan sacrifice at the local Samhain altar at the YMCA naturally.
Pure and undefiled religion, before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. James 1:27.
Blake quotes the book of James as proof of. Honestly, I'm not even sure. I don't know if she is either. In any case, I just wonder if it's alright to visit widows and orphans in a costume. What if they have a jack-o'-lantern in the driveway? Do I listen to James and visit the widow? Or do I listen to Blake, and avoid that horrible heathen of a Satan-worshipping, Halloween-celebrating pagan?
But we've joined forces with the world. In fact, instead of keeping ourselves unspotted, we have become one giant spot with it. We are so much alike no one can tell where the world ends and the church begins.
Oh really? No one? Like not even one person in the whole world? What about this guy? I'm not a Catholic, but he has a funny hat, and I think that means he knows something. Seriously though, what about the lawyers, who sue people for infringing the separation of church and state clash? They seem to be bringing plenty of cases to the Supreme Court. If no one can tell the difference between church religion and state secular, why the lawsuits about people who cross that border?
We need to start keeping ourselves pure in the small things, so that we will be able to stay pure and undefiled in the big things.
Really? Is that the way it works? You gotta start with Halloween, and only when you kick it out, only then can you conquer the big things. Is that why many fundamentalists do it just like that? For example, Tig Haggard, who used to have special prayers against the darkness of Halloween. But was later exposed to be using homosexual prostitutes. Blake's argument certainly didn't work for him. First of all, a small thing that fundamentalists are not very good at being faithful in is family. As I said above, we usually have our heads too stuck up our holy rear end to spend any quality time with the family doing crazy fun things, unless it's like Dutch Blitz or something. Secondly, God did destroy the works of the devil on the cross. I hardly doubt carving a pumpkin with my wife and daughter. And then, gasp! Eating the baked seeds qualifies as undoing the atonement of Christ. Third, who defines unspotted? Someone will tell me getting a tattoo violates that verse. Others will say drinking a can of Coke violates that verse. Maybe going on scary roller coasters violates that verse. Definitely watching movies, no question about that. This is the problem with the way legalists use holiness verses. Each other, at their own whim, sets their own standards, and then expects others to obey them. And of course, they call it God's standards. And what is pure, noble and lovely? When we spend the evening carving a pumpkin, eating the seeds and playing around. My wife, baby and I think that qualifies. I don't have to follow Blake's definition.